We are live on Facebook now.
Excellent.
Okay, you can go on.
Well, thank you all for joining. As I said, for those of you who probably just arrived and didn't hear me say it, our star attraction, Andy Morris, is not here yet. He's having some technical difficulties. So I think what we will do is we will just start the conversation because we have the questions that you've all asked. And Tyann and I have been through them and we've brainstormed how we might approach them. So we definitely can cover those. And if Andy manages to join us, then he can add a layer of gloss towards the end. So Tyann, why don't you take it away with the first question?
Okay, so Ginger said she would ask this question, and I am admitting her right now. She just joined us. So let's give her a chance to come on and ask her question as soon as she's here. She's connecting to audio. And if anyone else has a question, please feel free to put it in the chat. That's where we'll see it. And then you can ask it yourself or you want us to ask it for you. That's no problem at all. Just let us know and just throw it in the chat there.
Yeah, I guess that's a point worth repeating, Tyann, that these sessions are different from the webinars we've been doing in a sense that we don't have a panel of people for me to pose questions to and to wax lyrical about stuff that you may or may not find interesting. So the format is designed for you to ask us the questions so that you take away some value. So if you want to ask a question and you haven't asked one in the sign up, then like Tyann said, just put it in the chat box. And we've got quite a few questions already, but we will definitely get to it. Tyann, go for it.
Yes. Okay, Ginger, if you don't mind unmuting, and we're going to start with your question. You joined at exactly the right time. I saw you come in, and yours is the one we want to start with first. So if you're there, if you wouldn't mind unmuting, and we would love to see your face too, if you can turn your video on. And she might have stepped away right away too. We'll see.
Hi, I don't know if you
I'm gonna take the executive decision that Ginger, we will ask your question because your connection is you're totally robotic. I know you're not a robot. But you're definitely coming across as robotic. So Tyann, why don't you ask that question and then
Yes. All right. So Ginger wants to know, this is very appropriate, noise levels. What is what is the best way to set the stage for low
service
oh,
where I am?
Oh, I think it's so delayed that Ginger's audio just now came through. Okay, back to the question. The question is, the best way to set the stage for low noise levels, dealing with neighbor complaints about noise. I will give my answer what I do. We have some houses in residential area because it's a historical town that was never set up for vacation rentals type thing. So therefore the vacation and short-term rentals are within residential areas. And so we use a noise monitoring system and we tell the guests at what times that and what type of noise levels. We don't say if you're above 85 decibels, we're going to be contacting you because it's too loud. We say, if you are louder than a normal dinner after 10 p.m., that is when we will contact you. That way we're using language that folks understand. My brother understands decibels. That's what he does is he tries to make vehicles as loud as possible and gets awards for these things. He totally understands decibels. I don't. So I make sure I put it in words that my guests would understand. And what we do when we get that alert saying they are above the normal dinner after 10 o'clock, we immediately send them a text message reaffirming, hey, we're glad you're having a great time, but your noise level is too high. Please be respectful of the neighbors and bring it back down. And almost every single time within 30 seconds, their noise level is down and they've replied, we're so sorry.
What do you use to monitor the noise?
Personally, I use Minute, but there's also Noise Aware. Both of those are options depending upon what types of monitoring you need. What I like about Minute is it also monitors temperature and movement per second. And the reason I like those is because then I can figure out if it's a bunch of ladies sitting around having conversation, drinking wine, or is there a lot of movement and it's a party going on.
Interesting, very clever. And those two solutions are quite affordable, like it's a bit of hardware that you plug into a plug socket. Is that right?
Yeah. Noise Aware, I think, goes into a plug socket because I started with that one first. Minute is battery operated and it looks a lot like a smoke alarm. So we usually put it next to a smoke alarm. What I like is it will also have an alarm sensor and it will tell me if the smoke alarm goes off. So we had one guest who continually burned frozen pizza as they made it. And 10 o'clock, we get a warning that the smoke alarm went off. And we're like, hey, is everything okay? Yeah, we just burned the pizza again.
And the way you communicated to your guests, was that something you include in like a pre-arrival email or in part of the terms and conditions, or how do you communicate that you're going to be monitoring noise?
You definitely have to do it before they book. So it is in our listing description and it's in our house rules. And we're very clear that we're monitoring noise levels, but we are not recording any voices or monitoring anything that is recording actual voices or invasion of privacy. Because anything that's monitoring, you have to make sure they know ahead of time. You know, not just cameras, it's the noise levels also. The other thing we do is I just lost my train of thought. The noise,
How you
they have to
communicate it?
sign. Yeah, they have to. They our guest agreement. They have to initial that they're aware of this as well. We want to be very transparent, very upfront, and set those boundaries. I think that's very important to set boundaries and expectations.
Yeah. Okay.
Can I ask? Can I chime in here?
Go for it,
Yeah,
Graham.
absolutely, Graham.
Yeah. Tyann, is it absolutely impossible for you to hear the conversations?
Correct. It does not record any actual voices. It's only the noise level. So for instance, when my brother goes to a noise competition and they are monitoring noise levels to see who has the loudest vehicle and the loudest sound coming out of it, they're not recording actual sound. They're recording the level of sound and how loud it is. I remember what I was thinking the other thing that it pays attention to is, excuse me, it knows how many devices are connected to the Wi-Fi. So there's a party mode and you can say, I want to only know if it goes above 2 devices per person, here's my limit of occupancy. If it goes above this number of devices, report it to me and it will let you know.
Okay, so you're monitoring noise levels in your property. What about noise from adjacent properties, which you can't control? Do you have any means of trying to minimize that?
And you could put a monitor outside. I know Noise Aware has an outdoor one, Minute does not. I have put one outside on a covered porch so that it's, protected from the elements. And, I just wanted to make sure that the people on the patio outside weren't being too loud and bothering the neighbors.
I only have the one property, but it has a very thin party wall between that and the adjacent property, which when I bought it was an unoccupied property, but it's now another vacation property. And so I assume I when I'm down there, I can, if they've got guests in and they're a bit noisy, I can hear the noise literally coming through the wall into my property. And I assume they can hear noise going back the other way. I'm sure they can. But although that's been a situation for about 18 months, it hasn't actually proved the problem. Nobody's said anything at all. Maybe they've just, sort of coexisted with, well, we can make more noise than you. I don't know. But I've always thought it would become a problem, but it never has. But if it did become a problem, I don't know what I could do about it. Probably nothing. I should have bought the property, actually. It was up for sale and I should have bought it. But
Yep. I mean, the good thing about the noise monitoring is that you also have a record And if you have a neighbor saying, hey, these people were really loud, and that's false information, here you have a record saying they were only this level of decibels. They were not as loud as you said.
That's true. Yeah.
Mhm.
Okay.
Good. All right. I think we've exhausted that question. Ginger, I won't ask you to turn your sound on again and let us know whether we answered it, but if we didn't, just put a chat message and we'll come back to it. Okay, next one.
Let's see. How do you get guests to take care of the garbage and to put it out to the street for pickup? Well, I don't ask them to anymore. I have been a guest at a place, and what they did is they texted us to a reminder to remind us to do that. We do have a dumpster on some of our houses that is a neighborhood dumpster, so no trash is allowed at the houses, period, because there are animals that could get into it when you're in a rural area. So guests are asked to drive or walk their trash to a dumpster and take care of that. The other thing with our other properties that does have a trash can that has to go to the street each week, we do have shorter stays, and we have asked our trash company if we can pay them extra to go around the enclosure and grab the trash cans. That doesn't work for every single week pickup, but it works for most. And then after that, we have folks like our cleaning company to keep an eye on it, as well as the neighbors who also have a short-term rental. They keep an eye on things as well. One time their guests came over and stole our trash cans so that they could put their trash in our trash cans too. But it's just one of those things. Communication, if you can set up text reminders the night before, that would be great. A lot of times trash comes super early in the morning, so you don't necessarily want it early in the morning, but you'll just have to look at what expectations you've set, and again, those boundaries, and then communicate it well.
Yeah, I think from a guest perspective, which I speak from, I saw this question and I thought that was interchangeable with how do I get my guest to do X and replace X with anything. It was really about how you get the guest to do something. And personally, I'm glued to my phone, as I suspect most guests are these days. And if it's important that the rubbish, the trash goes out at a certain day, program a text that goes on that day. Not everybody has a programmable text solution, but Tyann, you use one, so they are out there, and it is possible. And I know once you use it, it's really, really good. It's really helpful. So I think that's a nice low maintenance way of doing it. I think if it's something that's really important that has to be done, I think the idea of repetition plays in here, and not being afraid to repeat yourself. And I would say repeat yourself in different ways. So if you've communicated it in your touch day guide, or it's somewhere in the home in a manual, then why not also put a message right next to the bin, the trash can, or even something that's actually on it that has, words of, like, just keep it simple. Trash is out on Thursday at 8 p.m. That's it. But it does talk about this whole thing goes to the heart of how you get your guests to do something that they're not doing. And unfortunately, I don't think there's a right or wrong answer, because we're all very, very different. But if you work on Tyann's philosophy of every guest, and I subscribe to this, I am that person. As soon as they walk out of their home to start their vacation, their brain goes into vacation brain, and it's not very smart. And if you start with that perspective, then it's about reminding people in a timely way. It's about not bombarding them with a really long communication. Those I loathe. I'm not going to act on that. So just like a short, simple 1 or 2 paragraphs, maybe even 1 or 2 sentences, I'm far more likely to act, and put some humor in it as well. Like, I hate things that don't have humor. If you can catch the guest off guard a bit, or say something a bit, whoa, I wasn't expecting that, they'll read it. They're engaged. That's the whole point. So I saw one of our customers who's got a property in Asheville in bear country, and he started off with a picture of bears and said, is this who you want to visit your home if you haven't put the trash out? And immediately you're thinking, well, no, I do not want a bear coming, so it's that kind of shock factor, which I think is very helpful as well. So instead of just dry kind of information and rules, give it some color.
Yeah, I pretty much do something similar. Well, I send an email at 5 p.m. on a Monday, prior to the trash being collected at 7 a.m. the following Tuesday morning. And I follow it up with, I mean, the email's a little bit humorous. It's the final line says, if you line the food, we have food waste pickup here, Tyann. I don't know if you have anything like that. The food waste is a recyclable thing that goes into, well, I don't know where it goes, but we have food waste collections every week, and I say, if you line the food waste bin with old newspaper, which is available in the vacation property, you'll score 10 out of 10, exclamation mark. A little bit of humor, maybe not much. And then I follow it up with a text an hour or two later, because people do forget things, and you just got to ram it home, because it can be a really big problem. I mean, we find that when people, recycling is a big thing in the UK. I don't know if it is in the US, but it's becoming bigger and bigger. The recycling bins that we have are twice the size almost of the actual trash bins, because you're being encouraged to recycle. But it seems to me that people, Andy says, when they get into vacation, when people get into vacation mood, they forget everything they do back at home. They do not recycle when they go on vacation. They just do not. They just chuck it all. Things that they put in recycling shouldn't be recycled. It just cannot be recycled. So I find I do spend an awful lot of time sorting that out from time to time.
If I may, Graham, on that point, I went for a weekend last weekend to Cornwall, and the place I stayed in did not have any obvious way to recycle. And we'd had, a couple of bottles of beer and some pizza, and so we had boxes, and I just messaged the host and said, "Do you have recycling?" And they said, "Oh yeah, we do." And within an hour, the cleaner had brought around a recycling bag where I could just put it in. It was really convenient. And I have to say, the recycling is one of the hardest things as a guest, because yes, there is that you pointed out, Graham, where it's like, oh, I'm on holiday, for just 1 week, I'm not going to recycle. It's not going to kill the planet. Like, I just can't be bothered for this 1 week. There is a bit of that. But the other thing is the convenience factor of it. If it's just, I know where to put those bottles and someone's going to take care of it, then I will do it. So it's like, how easy can you make it for me, I think, is the answer. And
fun, I guess, although it can never be fun, really. But if you ask in a fun way, I suppose that's the.
I think so. I think with all these things where, guests are human. They want a connection with someone, and as humans, there's this psychology when we first start talking to someone remotely who we never know. There's always this perspective of they must be strange, or they're a bit different, or I don't know them. Like, it's this unfamiliar thing. So the moment where someone does something slightly humorous or something strange happens and the barriers come down, it becomes like a normal conversation, as if you were talking to your friend. So I think the sooner you can get that barrier down to show your human side, to show your you're just quite normal, then I think that then the guest is really connected with you, and they're far more likely to engage and listen. Okay, shall we move on to the next one, Tyann?
Yeah. So let's do Rebecca's. Guests that don't check out on time. How do you handle those guests? Graham, do you ever have any of those guests?
Well, we had one who overstayed by 3 months. Seriously, at the start of the pandemic in March 2020, she came for a week, left quite happily, came back a week later. She it was just literally as we went into lockdown, and I made the mistake of saying, yes, you can come for a week, but then she wouldn't leave, and it resulted, lawyers were involved, etc., etc. And in the end, we had to become criminals ourselves to get her out. but we reclaimed the property, and she did pay us £10,000 for the 3 months she was there, so we can't really moan too much. But it nearly became a big problem, but luckily it didn't. But in terms of, other than that, we've had no problems at all, really, with guests leaving on time. Maybe some of them are 15 minutes late, but that's about all it is.
And I would say, as someone who, as a guest again, when I check out of a place, very often the things that we're required to do, we leave till the last minute. And that's the stuff that ends up keeping us in the place, like, oh, we forgot to turn the dishwasher on, or we forgot to load the dishwasher, or we forgot to empty the fridge, or we forgot to put the trash out, whatever it is. And I suspect a lot of people, well, I suspect a lot of them will leave without doing those things anyway. But I think a lot of people leave those things to the last minute, and they're rushing, trying to do the basics. So again, it would be about communicating what you need them to do before they leave. I know we've got Tammy Olsen on this call. Tammy, if you're listening, if you have a perspective on this, I'd be really interested, because you've got quite a few properties, I know. And I know you're a very good communicator, so I'm quite intrigued as to how you might ensure that the guests leave on time. So only if you want to chime in on that.
Yeah, we did have someone actually, he thought he had booked through a certain date, which he didn't. It was a day early that he was supposed to leave, and we were having guests come in. So we had to, and he was refusing because he had people coming, and it was something to do with his wife. I don't know if it was her birthday or what. So he refused to leave. And we then looked around and we found a cabin not far from his, and we actually moved them. And he was okay with that as long as he could have, what he had planned. So we moved them, and they actually stayed a couple of days there. But otherwise, everyone's pretty good. I mean, they may leave an hour later or whatever, but that was the only time that we really had to do anything. And somebody wasn't going to leave no matter what we said. So yeah, that was about the only time, and we just moved them to another cabin.
And do you build that into your processes? Like, you assume every guest will leave an hour later than planned?
We sort of do. Most of them are really good, and because we're in northern Wisconsin, and most of our guests come from Chicago, Minneapolis, southern Wisconsin, a lot of them leave early to get back home at a decent time anyway. So there's just, once in a while a cleaner will show up, and they're usually there a little bit after the time of checkout, and they'll text me saying, they're still here, but they're putting their stuff in the car or whatever. So we don't really worry about that. And it doesn't happen very often. So we've been pretty lucky, I think.
Okay, great.
I tackle it in two ways. I've got a poster, a laminated, coloured poster that's stuck on the wall of the kitchen that tells them what to do when they check out. And the same information is emailed to them, usually the evening before they check out the following morning. So it's, it's too much of the same information, I know, but that's the way we handle it. And we've never had any complaints on that, mostly. In fact, our cleaner usually says that the guests have been superb. She said, I can't believe the quality of the guests we get here. Well, I don't know the reason for that, but there must be something to do with those emails, I think, because the place, she's I've got nothing to do. Well, she has got something to do, but
you're attracting the right kind of guests. That's great. Yeah, go on, Tyann.
And I don't think you're doing too much, Graham. We do the same thing. We do a morning of email saying thank you for staying. There's the fridge sheet at eye level where everybody goes for food that has the emergency information plus the checkout information, of course, the QR code to the digital guidebook. And then if it's 15 minutes and our cleaners are there to clean, then we'll send a text message. But, sometimes our cleaners they wait later in the day, depending on what the schedule is, how many houses there are to do. And if they're there at that time, that means their schedule, they've got to get in there and get going to get everything done before the next check-in, because we do a lot of same day turns. At 30 minutes after, they're getting a phone call from us or our guest experience manager. And then after that, there's a knock on the door with a broom. I mean, not to swat them out, but to let them know, hey, we're here to do our job type thing. And very rarely do we have issues. A lot of times it's like you said, people are just packing up their cars, they're getting ready to go, and they're super nice about it. One guest decided they want to go smoke another joint on the back deck before leaving. So then when they left, that smell was left in the hallway, and we get a call from our housekeeper, frantic that they've stunk the whole place up. But by the time we arrived, the smell was gone, thankfully. But yeah, it's it's one of those things where you tell them the same thing over and over again in different ways, but there's still those outliers you have to take care of.
It's what I was thinking when I heard all of you talk. It comes very clearly across. The majority of guests are quite well behaved and normal and respectful. And often you can listen to things in this industry and assume that lots of guests are the opposite. But I think it's just that the bad news stories sell. They're the ones that we talk about. But they thankfully, at least from hearing you all, seem to be the minority, which is great to hear. Unfortunately, I think the bad ones are just very bad. I don't think there's like a slightly bad. It's like you're great or you're terrible. All right, good. Next question, Tyann.
Okay, so this one, Allie and Michelle asked very similar questions. Have you ever communicated too much in a guest's eyes? How much is engaging but not overloading? And if you did communicate too much, did they actually tell you, and how? I guess I'll take that one. I communicate a lot. If anyone has been following the Touch Stay blog, you'll see that Andy wrote a piece about communication circus and then linked to my truly choreographed communication flow. And if anyone's been to any conferences lately, I've done a presentation called Lessons from Guests. It's the magic fairy dust of guest loyalty. And I talk about how many touch points I have with a guest in my communication, and that it's different types of communication, not just email. So I think that's one of the keys is you're not to overload them with emails only, but to keep in mind that every guest is a different type of person. And all of us are different. That's what makes this world enjoyable and exciting, because if we were all the same, it'd be so boring. And so you got to think about, how do other people like to communicate? So different ways. So I send a card, I send text messages, there's a phone call involved, and then you have the emails. So making sure I reach people in different ways, because everyone is such a different type of person, and trying to hit all those different types of communication with them. And the reason I know it's working is because some of my emails, I start off with a question. I ask them, did you access our digital guidebook? Are you excited to arrive? Has your guest count changed? We need to know for emergency services, in case there's an emergency, how many people you want saved in a fire. Update this information for us. And they respond with excitement and thankfulness that we've asked them these questions. And they let us know that they really appreciate the guest communications. On top of that, it shows up in our reviews, and it's shown up in our reviews a lot lately. Very much people saying, thank you so much for the advanced communication. Really appreciate it. One person even going as far as saying, your advanced communication was so amazing. We know our stay with you will be just as amazing.
It's 14 points, isn't it, of communication you have in that flow. And I think it's interesting that most times I stay somewhere, I'm probably talking to people who do the exact opposite, but most of my experiences of staying somewhere is that the person I'm staying with communicates no times. It's once on booking confirmation, and then almost right until the time that I'm about to kind of show up, I get a communication, but there's nothing in between. It's that presentation that Tyann and I did a couple of years ago, which is that moment of tumbleweed, that kind of deserted town. It feels like that very much as a guest. And I think it's such a shame. There's so many opportunities to communicate. And given that there are so many things that you want to communicate, it's nice that you've got like this whole span between booking and arrival that's there for you to program communications. And little things like you need to make sure you book a restaurant because they get booked out. So if you try and do it when you get here, it's too late, and I should have realized that, but I didn't realize that. And when I arrived, it was too late. Like everywhere was booked. We're scrambling, trying to find somewhere. I would have benefited from a communication that told me that. So it might seem obvious, but it's, like tell the guests, because, they're in this mode of like, it'll be all right when I show up.
Andy, can I just ask you a question on that? I mean, I include that communication in Touch Day, but it gets lost with everything else, possibly. Do you do something that stands alone, as it were, a standalone communication on booking restaurants?
Yeah, I go Tyann, you go for it.
So, the one thing Andy said about booking restaurants that just made me think is like, okay, we do a standalone email about grocery delivery service because we have large houses and families are there to cook together. I need to add to that about restaurants, because in Branson, there's nowhere to make reservations. It is walk-in only. And right now with the staff shortage and the influx of people, you could easily be waiting 2 hours for your meals. And that's really, really frustrating when you don't know this ahead of time. And I'm like, yeah, I need to add that about just a whole section on food. And then of course I always direct them back to the guidebook. So now that there's the deep links, I'm thinking I can, link to, hey, this restaurant usually has a smaller wait time because it's a hole in the wall that only the locals go to. Or while you're waiting for the Downing Street Poorhouse, you walk down the street to the tap room, have a drink, have a flight, and then walk back when your table is ready. Those types of things.
Yeah, it's a good point to use the deep link to take them directly to that part of Touch Day, Graham. That's what I would do, is program an email that goes, a couple of weeks beforehand. We
usually send out the guidebook 30 days prior, so that they have time to really look it over. And then, because I have all the restaurants, we don't have too much worry in northern Wisconsin for anything being booked. So, and most of them are bars. But I like to send it out 30 days prior so that they can really look and see what the local area, and I have quite a bit of stuff there, gives them to do, or to where to go, where to eat, where to meet people, or whatever. So I send that out. They get a confirmation, then they get the guidebook 30 days out, and then we do an arrival instruction 7 days out. I send the questions and concerns 3 days out, and I get a lot of questions that, because of COVID, I wanted to make them feel like I want to make sure that they were okay. So I send out an email that says, do you have any questions or concerns? Don't forget to do this, and things like that. And I get a lot of thank yous from that. So I really like that one. And then we also do a text with the guidebook a couple days prior, just to make sure it is on their phone. And then we text them hello, we text them goodbye and thank you. And then we have a survey that goes out, I think a day after they're gone. So I don't know if that's too much, but that's what we do.
No, that's not too much. And what I like about it is your questions are different, or your things are different. And I especially like the do you have any questions or concerns, where you can try to elicit a response back from a guest is far better than pushing something onto them and expecting them to, take it on or whatever. You get them to kind of question. So as an example of this, in our world, in every new user that signs up to us gets a series of emails over the 14 days that are authored by me, but the system does them for me. The one that I get the most responses to is, I forget when it kicks in, it's about halfway through, and it says, let me know which camp you're in. Camp 1, loving life. Camp 2, don't have enough time. Camp 3 is, this thing doesn't do what I want it to do. They're written in a humorous way. I get so many responses to that email, but not to all the others. And that's like that. You just reminded me, Tammy, that's exactly why you're getting those responses, is because you're asking, how are you? Anything I can do? What's up? Tell me, and then and that's that bit where I was saying earlier, then you break the barrier down instantly.
Well, in that vein, but probably the thing I have most response on, and it's just sort of happened automatically, really. We have checkout time at 10 a.m. and check-in time at 3 p.m. So a 5-hour window. Normally the cleaner's done in about what used to be nearer 4 hours during the peak of COVID, but it's not so bad now, maybe 3 hours. It's definitely 3 hours if there's just 2 people in. And as soon as she texts me and says, I'm done, I text the incoming guest and say, we're all done, you can go in any time you like now. And occasionally, like last weekend, I think, she knew there was some traffic holdups about 2 miles away. And so I was able to alert the guests that they might be held up on their way to the property, you know, and I got a really big thank you from the guests for that. Yeah.
Yeah,
That's probably the best, the most human relationship I ever had with the guests, actually.
Yeah.
To the question that I asked you, Tyann.
Yeah. It is that what's in it for me as a guest. It literally is like, why do I need to engage with this email? Why do I need to respond to this? Why do I need to do this? What's in it for me? Like, and if you can, yeah, if you can kind of broker that kind of relationship, then you're on a winner.
So Graham sent in several questions, and there's one specific one that I want to ask. And Andy, I want you as your guest hat on to answer this. And if anyone else wants to answer it as a guest point of view, I think it'd be really powerful and beneficial to everybody. So the question is, what am I not telling my guests that they would like to know?
What am I?
Andy doesn't know what I am telling the guests. So.
Well, as far as your travel experiences, what are you know, the normal things are, hey, here's directions, here's the address, here's the code. That's about it. But what are those other extra things that you as a guest would like to know before you arrive?
I think it goes back to the point I was making before, that I'm staying with somebody who cares, who gives a crap about my experience. I don't want to stay with, I'm not like every guest, okay? Some guests were like a totally clipped professional, like don't talk to me kind of relationship. I'm not big on somebody coming and showing me around the house and being in my face all the time, but I do want to know that person's there. So I think it's less about the things that I need to know and more about the feeling. Like, I need to know that I'm staying with somebody who, you know, who has my back, who, you know, cares generally about my experience. And so I think back to those things that we were talking about just now with the sort of things that Tammy does, those are the sort of things that I would encourage not to do more of, like to outweigh the functional things, but scattered in some of the functional communications, throw in a bit of, what can I do for you? You know, anything that you're thinking, you know, ahead of your stay, like, what, tell me, you know, start that dialogue, end with a question, you know, what do you think? Have you got any thoughts? Would you like, you know, something like that I think that's far better. And I think that will then inform you going forward about the sorts of things that you may not be communicating, your guests want to know. That will inform you. And that's the best kind of feedback.
That
really,
makes sense.
Yeah.
I think part of the problem, Andy, maybe this is different between the US and the UK. I find that I very rarely meet my guests, and I very rarely find that they want to actually engage with me in anything. I mean, dare I say that I don't get much communication, and probably over 50% of it is when guests don't like something. And usually it's after they've gone. I mean, I had a poor couple who, unbeknown to me, couldn't understand how to work the heating. It must have been last winter, I think. And they endured low temperatures in the property because they just didn't bother to contact me and say, look, we're cold, we can't adjust the heating. And I felt awful about that, but it was too late. They'd gone and given me bad reviews and blah, blah, blah.
And I think Graham, that's the point I'm making. I think that you're not that awful person. You would have helped them. You would have fixed it. They either didn't know how to get in touch with you, or they felt like somewhat, you know, I don't know, slightly embarrassed, or like, I can't work it, or I don't want to bother Graham, but I think if you have that, so I am that same person. I am very British in that sense, that I don't want to, like, I don't want them to become my best friend. I don't need that kind of level of involvement. I very much want my own space, but I would really like to know that if I have anything at all throughout my stay that is going to go wrong, or I've got a question, that the person I'm staying with, I know will respond. I know how to get in touch with them. I know they're human. I know they'll care. That's the bit that if you can try and convey, And maybe that would have solved that one, maybe it wouldn't. I
Yeah,
don't know. We'll never
particularly
know.
if it was done before they even checked in. If you've got that relationship established early, before they actually check in, then they don't hesitate to contact you, I guess.
Exactly.
Maybe
Yeah.
that's
And
the secret.
the other thing we do is we'll send them a text or phone call right after they arrive. So we watch the locks, we see that they arrive. So 30 to 60 minutes later, one of my guest experience managers, and it used to be myself, is we would reach out and say, hey, want to make sure you arrive safely, everything's good with the house. Just to open up that communication line to let them know we care and we are there and that we'll respond. And I really think they really appreciate that. I mean, with the heating AC thing, I remember on spring break in Florida, and we get there and it's hot as anything. We arrive at 1 a.m. and it's humid in the house, and I cannot find the thermostat to bring the AC down. There was no information whatsoever on how to do this. And so we suffered the first night. And then the next day, I texted them and they responded, oh, yeah, it's the white box that looks like a security box, but it's actually the thermostat. And I'm thinking, labels, give me a label maker. Thermostat.
I also think you can qualify. You can kind of almost group your guests. If your sequence of communication thinks about the different types of guests that exist out there. So you've got those that want almost no communication, those that want every form of communication. You've got those who want to read stuff on a physical thing. You've got those who want to look at it on technology. You've got those who will just call you, those who will text you. And I know it's hard to hit everybody, but think of your guests falling into, 3 or 4 groups. Like, try to document like what those guests are, what those personas are, and then make sure that when you're delivering those communications pre-arrival, that some communications hit the ones that are very low touch, don't want to hear from you, but just want to know where to find stuff, and some for those who are a bit more touchy-feely, so that they know where to go to get the answer to their question. So those who want the low touch will know, to go to your touch day guide because it's there. Those that want to text you will know, because I think that's a major part of it as well, is not to kind of box them all into just this one sort of like, if I send these 5 emails, everybody will surely read them and respond to them. And that's not the case. Like, I would definitely tailor them.
Yeah, be a bit more human, maybe in my case. I think that's part of my problem. I tend to.
You are very human, Graham. Like, that comes across.
Yeah, but you can see me and we can talk. You see, but unless you actually establish that relationship,
that's a skill. That's a skill to get that across in the non-verbal communication.
Yeah.
But you've got tons of tools to do it these days, and I think you're
true. I've got a few clues from this session how to improve things going forward, and I've got a turnaround tomorrow, so I'm going to do that tonight.
That's good, Graham.
When the guests arrive tomorrow, they are going to know they can talk to me.
Hopefully they don't overwhelm you with questions, but I actually don't think that's the case. I just think you end up serving those who want to be able to know that there's someone there, but don't actually ever use you. I think
I'll blame it all on you, of course.
Yeah.
I'll say I've got a friend called Andy who insists that I talk to you.
Here's his text number. Yeah, he likes to talk. Go and phone him. Cool. All right, next question.
All right. Let's wrap it up with Sabrina and Gregory's questions. So I'll give them together because they're very similar. Sabrina says, I'm very new to the system, and I just want to get an idea of how other hosts manage their rentals and their guest communications. And Gregory, well, I guess this isn't similar, but he asked how to get the guests to install and read the Touch Day guidebook. They're similar, but not similar.
Well, I have a story about the Touch Day guidebook. The other day, most of the time I get great review. I mean, they're like, oh, we love, the Touch Day. We love the guidebook. We love it so much. Thank you so much for doing that. We realize, and some people even say we realize how much work you put into that. So that's nice. But the other day I had someone go into the cabin, and then she stayed and gave me a review. And it was like, I'm in my 50s and I just don't need to, I don't want to be bothered with an app. And I was like, and I'm reading this, and she goes, I even asked my 20-year-old kids about it. And I'm like, I'm in my 50s and I love everything app, of course, because I'm a little techie geek, and I just couldn't believe it. It was the first time I've ever had anything about it, and I was and she's like, you should just get rid of it. And I'm thinking, oh my gosh, you gotta be kidding, because you're not sitting here manning the phones. But I guess it stunned me that she just didn't want to be bothered with it. And so I'm glad that most of them read it, and they seem to, I don't have that many questions anymore. And so I like that, but I guess I was just stunned when she said she just didn't want to be downloading another app.
Yeah, but Tammy, do you know that the guests are reading it? Because I absolutely
Yeah,
no
yeah, you
idea.
can see. Yeah, because you can see the views on touch. I mean, it tells you how many times it's been viewed. So I know that most of them have to be reading it. I don't get questions. I
Oh.
get a lot of people telling me they enjoy the guidebook. So I'm pretty sure most of them at least look at it.
I'm going to have to look at TouchStay. I didn't realize that you could do this with TouchStay.
Yeah, there's
and
views
that's
on it.
awful.
Yeah,
Okay.
there's views.
Oh, God.
So
Right. That's another thing to look at.
So
Oh,
Graham, I
dear.
guess we didn't do good with our communication on what we released
Yeah.
earlier this summer.
Yeah. Yeah.
Thanks, Tammy.
you're welcome.
And Tammy, you raise a really good point there, which is that you know that it's working if you are seeing or you're receiving less questions. You don't necessarily need to even look at the view count. You just know intuitively because you're getting less questions. I think the other thing is there is sometimes this slight, oh, it's an app that I've got to go and download. And I think that we all know it's not. It's a web link that allows you to add it to your home screen if you need to. And sometimes I think that did that person did she have a question, or she was just kind of making a comment that
She was just making a comment
Okay.
about it, that she was like, I didn't need to be bothered with another app. And you know, she like puts her, I don't know, the whole 50s thing. I'm just like, I'm 56, and I'm thinking that 50's not old. So you should
Yeah.
be able to be a little techie. I don't know. It was,
yeah.
it was just, it blew me away that they even remotely didn't want to be bothered with it. When I go places, I have like a book of everything. And because most of the time I end up staying a lot in the hotels or whatever, and I don't have time to get a vacation rental, but I still have like everything I can imagine that I can find, I dig out. I have these people that come here and they haven't even read the guidebook or their arrival instructions, and they don't know how to get into their cabin. And I'm astounded that anybody just drives 4 hours away from their home to a place they have no clue about. And so I try so hard to go through every single arrival and make sure they have that. I look through and make sure that they got their emails and that they're open and that they got their guide and that they viewed it. And but some people just, I miss them, or they just fall out of the, I don't know how to get so that everybody, I feel like I have to handhold.
Yeah.
I'm worried that they're not getting enough information.
You can't, Tammy. You're doing enough. You're doing absolutely enough. You just can't. It's that thing where you can't please people. It's the same with this. You can't get people to do something they just won't do. You know, it's like there is that segment of people out there. So I say just keep what you're doing. I wouldn't. I think if you were saying the reverse, where you were saying, oh, there's the majority of people that I finding, are still asking me questions, that would be a different problem. But it sounds like you've nailed it really, and you're just thinking about the outliers now.
I know what Andy Morris would do in this situation. So what he does is whenever he has a question come in, he has the deep links saved. And I believe a lot of them he's made into short links that are easy for him to remember as well. And so if somebody asks about the recycling, then we do recycling. Here's where to find the information. And he sends them back to the digital guidebook. Someone has a question about checkout instructions. Yeah, here's the checkout instructions, back to the guidebook. So every single question, he drives them back to the guidebook and sends the deep link to that section as well. So just reinforcing it's in the guidebook, but always answering their questions as well.
And I plead ignorance again. You're mentioning deep links and short links, Tyann. I haven't got a clue what you're talking about.
All right, so
would you like to educate me, please?
Absolutely. So a deep link is another feature we rolled out this spring with the new back end. And instead, so you have the quick share link that goes directly to your guidebook. But
Right.
now you can go to a specific section and share the link to that specific section or topic. So
Right.
if you want if you want to drive people directly to the trash takeout section, and you have a video of Graham showing how to lay in where the food pickup is, then you send a link directly to that.
Right. Right. I
Right.
will be on the case tonight, guys.
And there is a place on when you first log in on the guides page, top right, there's a downloads button.
Yeah.
If you go there, you'll see download my deep links.
In
And it
my
gives-
defense, I only upgraded to the latest version fairly recently, a matter of 10 days or something, and I haven't actually looked at it in detail.
But there you go. This is just one of the joys of the new version. You've got lots of different features. But for you, Tammy, I don't know if you've done it, but certainly when I've been training and onboarding new property managers who've got multiple properties, that deep link file is really, really popular, because in one single Excel file, you have all of your property names across the top and all of your different topics down the left-hand side. And in the middle is a giant matrix of all of the different web links to the different properties, different sections. So if you get a question, I'm staying in XYZ shack and I can't work the dishwasher, you go, stand by, I'm going to text you. You look in your matrix, you grab the link and you text it to them and they go straight in. So I think that's definitely a garbage sort of trash thing, Graham, if you wanted to get
Yeah. I will look at that. Yeah. Thank you.
No problem.
About the garbage, we have a garbologist.
A what?
Garbologist.
We have a garbologist. It's
Oh,
one of
dear.
our owners. He picks up the trash and he calls himself a garbologist. So, and I didn't put that in touch day, but now I'm going to, because it's funny to us. I mean, we're all like, he's the head garbologist.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna definitely put that
Let me
into.
write that down. Head garbologist. This is brilliant.
In a photo, please, Tammy, a photo.
Oh, that's a
And
good
share it with
idea.
them.
I'll
Yeah.
take a picture of Dave, and our head garbologist picks up your trash. And most of the time they get put in sheds, because of course we're in northern Wisconsin where there's critters everywhere. But yeah, we have our head garbologist, and now I'm going to share that. I like the humor, and I was thinking that I shouldn't, I mean, trash isn't really funny, but now I'm going to make it funny.
Exactly, that's the answer.
All right, so on Facebook, we actually had a couple questions come in a few minutes. So Donna Martinez, she had a comment in the same way that restaurant servers will pop by your table to ask if the meal is okay. Do we need anything else, more to drink? The owners should offer this opportunity to mention issues, ask for something, or help locate something, whatever. So that simple check-in text the day after, or maybe 2 days in for a longer stay. That was her suggestion. And then Rob says, with regards to the view counter, what counts as a view? So Andy, this is for you. Each time an app is opened or each time a page is viewed?
It's each time the app is opened. So if you have 16 different parts of the guide that are accessed, it's one view.
Gotcha. Cool. And then one other comment, this is from Donna also. She says she set up a version of her guide for her housekeepers who are Spanish speakers. Ultimately, she had to walk through it with them to doing it herself. And while she saw the page, they did not have it downloaded. There is a hesitancy for more apps to clutter the face of your phone. Not everyone groups their apps in sections. Her suggestion is do a hide and seek. Let's see what else is cut off. Do a hide and seek, find and quote something for a discount freebie or some such bonus. So to get people deeper into the guidebook. Her principal once did something similar with teachers to urge them to read their memos. So that trained them all to discover that every once in a while, a memo would include an announcement of free donuts in the lounge.
I really like that concept. I'm not sure I know what you would do, but I think it sparks the imagination of the sorts of things that you could gamify, you know, like make it a fun thing to, what can I find if I go into this section, or what will I get if it's that same kind of feedback thing, isn't it, that we were talking about earlier? It's not just like a set of information, but I'm going to get something. Not sure what it would be, but I like the idea.
Awesome. And those are the comments from Facebook. And then I think these other questions that we got in the chat were answered within our conversations.
Okay, wonderful. Did we answer all the questions that were on the Zoom registration?
Pretty much. Yeah.
All right, fantastic.
In one way or another, we did. Yes.
Great, good. Well, thank you. It was a small crowd, but it was a good discussion. So thank you for coming on. Graham and Tammy, thanks a lot for participating. And that's exactly what we wanted from this kind of thing, was just more audience participation and more of a dialogue and a chat. So thank you for that. Really appreciate it. And to everyone else, thank you for joining, and wish you all a great weekend. Was there anything, Tyann, that we wanted to say in closing?
I'm sure there is some type of sales thing we're supposed to say at this point, or where we're going to be at.
People know
I have
who
no
we are.
clue.
Yeah.
I don't know. We'll see you guys around. If you have any questions, email us. We're always open.
Great.
Okay.
All right.
Thanks guys.
All. See ya.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Bye now.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.